If you were gone, no one would even notice. My wife said it with a laugh during our backyard barbecue, embarrassing me in front of everyone. She had no clue. I was a judicial enforcement officer, someone who knew precisely how to make people disappear by the book. Challenge accepted, Allison. Let's see who vanishes first. My name is Michael Fleming. I'm 47, and for the past 15 years, I've worked as a judicial enforcement officer for the county court. In simple terms, I'm the guy who shows up when people skip out on debts or ignore court orders. I serve notices, enforce judgments, and make sure the law gets what it's owed. It's not a glamorous job, but it pays well and taught me everything about property law, asset shielding, and how money can quietly disappear when someone refuses to pay. The night that changed everything started out like any other Saturday in our suburban haven. Allison had planned one of her signature backyard parties. Our Maple Ridge home was built for hosting, a wide deck, a perfect lawn that cost more each month than most car loans. The guest list was the usual: her Pilates buddies, a few neighbors, and her sister Janet, who always looked at me like I was something she'd step over on a sidewalk. I was at the grill, flipping burgers and keeping quiet while they gossiped about which husband was having a midlife crisis. Our 17-year-old son, Benjamin, was upstairs, probably gaming, headphones on, blissfully detached from the adult circus below. "Michael's such a creature of habit," Allison announced to the group, her voice carrying that fake warmth she used when she wanted to sound sweet but really meant dull. She was on her third glass of wine, holding court by the outdoor fireplace. Same breakfast every morning, same route to work, same everything. If he disappeared tomorrow, honestly, no one would even notice. The laughter hit like a punch to the gut. Our so-called friends and neighbors were all laughing. Janet raised her glass. "Allison, you're awful," but she was giggling too. I kept flipping the meat, my jaw clenched, watching the grease pop and hiss. And I wondered how easy it would be to just walk away from this grill, this house, this life where I'd somehow become invisible. "He's reliable," Allison went on, basking in the attention. "But reliable's just another word for predictable, isn't it? When's the last time Michael surprised anyone?" I set the spatula down and turned toward them. The chatter died instantly. Allison looked up at me with those blue eyes that once made my heart skip, but now just looked cold and smug. "Challenge accepted," I said quietly, meeting her stare. She blinked. "What?" I didn't repeat it. Instead, I went back to the grill, finished cooking, and served everyone with a smile. But something inside me had shifted. The dependable, routine Michael Fleming was gone, and I was already planning my next move. That night, long after the guests left and Allison passed out in her room, I sat alone in my office surrounded by legal files and case notes. The computer screen glowed as I created a new folder and named it Exit Strategy. Monday morning, I sat at my courthouse desk, staring at a pile of foreclosure notices waiting to be served. But all I could think about was Allison's smirk when she mocked me. I opened my personal laptop and started a new spreadsheet. 15 years of marriage had taught me one thing: Allison never read the fine print. Every loan, every refinance, every joint purchase, she'd sign wherever I told her to and trust me with the rest. That trust was about to be her downfall. My phone buzzed, a text from Allison. "Forgot to mention, going to Janet's spa weekend Friday. Watch Benjamin." Just like that. No question, no discussion. Just an order dressed up as information. I walked down the hall to property records. Sarah, my longtime co-worker, had been there 20 years. She knew every file in the system. "Hey, Sarah," I said, leaning on her desk. "Need to grab some old personal filings, marriage trust documents from about 8 years ago." "Sure thing, Michael," she said, typing quickly. "What's the case number?" I gave her the details. Minutes later, she pulled up our joint trust agreement, the one Allison had signed without ever reading, back when we refinanced to bail out her failed interior design business. There it was, buried deep in Section 12, a debt consolidation clause allowing either spouse to file liens against shared assets in the event of marital breakdown or abandonment. I'd written that clause myself, using phrasing I'd borrowed from dozens of divorce filings. At the time, I told Allison it was standard protection. She'd rolled her eyes and signed it, more focused on her business launch than the fine print of our finances. That afternoon, I stopped by Benjamin's school to catch his baseball practice. My son was pitching, throwing fastballs with the same precision and intensity I'd drilled into him since he was 8. He spotted me in the bleachers and waved between innings. "Dad," Benjamin called after practice, jogging over with his gear bag. "Mom said you might not make it today." "Why would she say that?" I asked, helping him load his stuff into my truck. Benjamin shrugged. "She's been saying weird things lately, like you're too busy with work, not paying attention to family." I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. "What do you think, Ben? Do I work too much?" "You work hard," he said carefully, "but you're always there when it matters. Not like some parents." Smart kid. He saw more than he let on. That evening, while Allison was upstairs on a video call with her photography club, I sat in my office and began phase 1 of my exit strategy. I opened new accounts, shifted funds, and set things in motion that would take weeks for anyone to uncover. If Allison thought I was invisible before, she was about to learn the difference between being overlooked and being gone for good. Next door, Dorothy Hartwell had lived on Maple Ridge for 23 years, and nothing escaped her notice. A 72-year-old retired judge, she had sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of legal instincts that could spot danger before it arrived. I was trimming the hedges Saturday morning when she appeared by the fence, coffee mug in hand. "Michael," Dorothy said, her tone carrying the authority of someone who'd spent decades on the bench. "We need to talk." I set down the trimmer and walked over. Dorothy was always polite but reserved. This was different. "That young man who's been visiting your wife," she said bluntly. "Cheyenne Nash. He's been parking in your driveway while you're at work." My stomach clenched, but I kept my face neutral. "I see. 3 times this week," Dorothy continued, sipping her coffee. "He stays a couple of hours each visit. Yesterday, I saw them loading boxes into his truck." "What kind of boxes?" I asked. "Small ones, the sort used for jewelry or paperwork." Her eyes narrowed. "Michael, I've seen this before in divorce cases. People start moving assets before they file." I leaned against the fence, processing. Allison was already preparing for a divorce I hadn't even been told about. "There's more," Dorothy added. "A woman came by Tuesday, claimed to be an appraiser. Said she was evaluating your home, but spent most of her time measuring the yard and taking exterior photos." "Did Allison know about this?" "Your wife was the one who let her in." A cold weight settled in my chest. Allison wasn't just unfaithful. She was preparing to strip me of everything. "Dorothy," I said slowly, "if someone hypothetically wanted to safeguard their assets before a divorce, what would you suggest?" The retired judge smiled faintly. "Hypothetically, I'd say act fast and think like a chess player, not a checker player. And remember, in family court, possession counts for 9/10 of the law." That afternoon, Benjamin came home from a friend's house looking uneasy. "Dad, can I ask you something?" he said, dropping his backpack on the kitchen counter. "Always, son. Mom's been asking weird questions about my college fund, like how much is in it, and if I'd rather go to a cheaper school to save money." I poured him some orange juice and sat across the table. "What did you tell her?" "That I wanted to talk to you first." Benjamin studied my face. "Is everything okay? Mom's been acting off lately." "How so?" I asked. "She keeps having these phone calls where she stops talking when I walk in. And yesterday, I saw her printing bank statements from your office." Smart kid. He was connecting the same dots I was. "Benjamin," I said carefully, "if things between your mom and me get complicated, I want you to know my main concern is making sure you're taken care of. Your future, college, everything." "Are you guys getting divorced?" The question hit harder than I expected. I'd been so focused on logistics that I hadn't stopped to feel the weight of it. "I hope not," I admitted, "but I'm making sure we're ready for anything." That night, after Allison went to bed early, another one of her convenient headaches, I sat in my office and made a call. "Dorothy, it's Michael. I need a favor." Janet Porter had never liked me, but I didn't understand why until she showed up in my office that Tuesday afternoon. Allison's sister was usually polished and composed, but today she looked shaken. "We need to talk," Janet said, taking a seat across from my desk. "It's about Allison and what she's planning." I leaned back, folding my arms. "I'm listening." "She came to see me last weekend," Janet began, nervously twisting the strap of her purse. "Asked me to co-sign a loan. She said you two were buying an investment property." That was news to me. Janet's face reddened. "I figured as much when I saw the documents. It wasn't for real estate, Michael. It was a personal loan for $50,000, and she used your house as collateral." The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Allison was liquidating assets, building a future that didn't include me. I told her no, Janet went on. That's when she snapped and started talking about Chandler. Said you'd ignored her for years and that she deserved to be happy. And what do you think? I asked. Janet blinked, taken aback. Honestly, I think my sister's making the worst mistake of her life. You're a good man, Michael, better than she ever gave you credit for. That caught me off guard. Janet had treated me like an intruder for 15 years. Why tell me this now? Because Chandler Nash isn't who he says he is. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot. I ran a background check. He's got 2 ex-wives in different states, both divorced in the last 3 years. Both lost their homes in the settlements. I studied the screen, multiple aliases, a pattern of preying on married women with assets, restraining orders, financial manipulation. Allison has no idea, Janet said. She thinks he's some successful businessman who's going to give her a better life. I tried to warn her. She accused me of being jealous, even said you probably paid me to dig up dirt on him. Janet sighed. She's completely blinded by this guy. I saved the evidence Janet had given me and considered my next move. Allison wasn't just being unfaithful. She was being conned by a professional predator. Janet, I said quietly, I need a favor. Keep track of everything she tells you. Plans, dates, amounts, anything tied to property or money. You're going to fight her? I'm going to protect my family, I replied, including my son. That night, I met with my lawyer in an emergency session and laid everything out. The fake loan application, the suspicious appraisal, Chandler's criminal history, and the boxes Dorothy had seen being loaded into his truck. Michael, my lawyer said after scanning the documents, your wife is walking straight into a sophisticated scam. The real question is, do you want to save her or let her face the consequences? I thought about Benjamin, about the college fund Allison had been sniffing around, about Dorothy's reminder that possession was 9/10 of the law. I want to protect what matters, I said. Everything else can burn. 2 weeks after Janet's revelation about Chandler's past, I activated phase 2 of my plan. If Allison wanted to play financial games, I'd make sure the rules favored the one who actually knew them. First, I transferred Benjamin's college savings into a protected education trust that only I could access, legally airtight and morally justified, since it was always meant for his future anyway. Next, I visited our financial advisor, Tom Patterson, pretending I wanted to rebalance our investments. I'm worried about market instability, I told him in his downtown office. I want to move our liquid assets into safer, long-term accounts. Tom nodded eagerly. Conservative clients were his favorite. Within a week, I'd restructured our portfolio so most of our cash was locked in investments with heavy early withdrawal penalties. Allison could still reach the money, but doing so would cost her dearly and leave a paper trail a mile long. That was the beauty of working in judicial enforcement. I'd seen every trick people used to hide assets. The clever schemes amateurs tried always looked like bad magic tricks to professionals. Thursday evening, while Allison was out at yet another suspicious Pilates session, Benjamin helped me move a few personal items into a storage unit. Dad, he said, loading a box of my old law books into the truck, are you moving out? Just being cautious, I replied. Sometimes when things get complicated, it's smart to secure what matters before it can be turned against you. Benjamin was quiet for a moment, then said, Mom asked me about that photo album from your police academy graduation, the one with all your awards and stuff. Interesting. Allison had never cared about my career achievements before. What did you tell her? I asked Benjamin. That I didn't know where it was, he said seriously. I put it in my closet after she asked. Seemed like she shouldn't have it for now. Smart kid. He was learning strategy. That weekend, Dorothy invited me over for coffee. Her kitchen overlooked our driveway, and she had become my unofficial surveillance partner. Chandler was back Tuesday. Dorothy reported, pouring coffee from her antique pot, that he had brought a woman with him, mid-40s, polished, professional. What kind of professional? I asked. The kind with a briefcase, taking photos of property. Dorothy set her cup down firmly. Michael, they're planning more than an affair. I pulled out my phone and showed Dorothy the background info Janet had gathered on Chandler. Dorothy adjusted her glasses and studied the screen. This man is a predator, she said flatly. And your wife is about to be his next victim, unless I intervene. She smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had spent decades watching justice play out. "What do you need from me?" I asked. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. Friday afternoon, while serving papers downtown, I spotted Chandler's truck outside a high-end restaurant. Through the window, I saw him having lunch with a woman matching Dorothy's description. I called in sick for the rest of the day and waited. An hour later, they emerged, shaking hands as if they'd just closed a deal. She handed Chandler a manila envelope. Her car's real estate plates confirmed Dorothy's suspicions. I drove home to find Allison in the kitchen, humming as she prepared what looked like a celebratory dinner. Candles, good wine, her best dress. "Special occasion?" I asked, loosening my tie. "Just felt like doing something nice," she said, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. The lie was so effortless, I almost admired her skill. "Where's Benjamin?" "At Jake's tonight," she said, returning to cooking. "Thought we could have some alone time." "Perfect. No witnesses for what's coming." During dinner, Allison chatted lightly, carefully avoiding photography or creative projects. She practically glowed with excitement over something she couldn't share. "Allison," I said, setting down my glass, "we need to talk about your relationship with Chandler Ash." She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "I don't know what you mean." "Dorothy saw you loading boxes into his truck. Janet told me about the loan you asked her to co-sign. David Kim called about unauthorized transfers from our accounts." Her face went through several emotions before settling on defiance. "You're watching me?" "I'm protecting my family," I said calmly. "From a man with 2 other wives in different states and a history of financial fraud." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "That's ridiculous. Chandler's a successful entrepreneur." I pulled out my phone and showed her the background check. "Chandler Nash has been married 4 times under 3 names. He's under investigation for real estate fraud in Nevada." Allison stared at the screen, her confidence shaking. "He's using you, Allison. Once he's done taking everything we've built, he'll vanish, leaving you with nothing." "You're lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Call him," I suggested. "Ask about his ex-wives, the restraining orders." Allison stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "I don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do," I said, standing as well. "Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce and requesting an emergency injunction to freeze our assets until this is resolved." She looked at me as if I'd slapped her. "You wouldn't dare?" "Challenge accepted," I said, returning her own words. The morning after the confrontation, Allison's side of the bed was empty and cold. Her suitcase was gone, along with most clothes and her grandmother's jewelry box. She'd left a note on the counter, "Going to stay with Janet while I figure things out. Don't contact me." Classic move. Run when confronted, then play the victim from a safe distance. Benjamin found me reading the note over coffee. "She's really gone?" "For now," I replied. "How do you feel?" He shrugged, practicing teenage indifference, but I saw relief in his eyes. The house was quieter, not necessarily bad. Smart kid. He'd been walking on eggshells around her moods for months. I called my lawyer and accelerated the timeline. With Allison gone, I could execute the final phase of my plan without worry of interference. "Michael," my lawyer said, "if she's left the marital home, that strengthens your case for emergency orders." By noon, I filed for divorce, requested emergency custody of Benjamin, and petitioned for a restraining order to prevent Allison from accessing our joint accounts. The advantage of knowing the court system was understanding exactly how to navigate it efficiently. That afternoon, Dorothy appeared at my door carrying a casserole and wearing a knowing smile. "I saw the moving truck at Janet's place this morning," she said, sliding into my kitchen chair as if she owned it. Allison looked like she'd been crying. "Big moving truck," Dorothy continued, narrowing her eyes. "Professional movers, not just Chandler's pickup. They're loading furniture, appliances, even artwork I recognize from your living room." I felt my jaw tighten. Allison wasn't just leaving. She was taking things that didn't belong to her. "Dorothy, I need another favor," I said, pulling out my phone. "Document everything they take. Photos, license plates, anything useful in court." "I've already started," Dorothy said. "Here, look at my phone." She showed pictures of them loading my grandfather's clock into the truck. That evening, I sat Benjamin down for a serious talk. "Son, your mother and I are getting divorced," I said. "The papers will be served tomorrow, and it may get messy for a while. Benjamin nodded solemnly. Will we be okay? Better than okay, I replied. We'll be honest with each other and protect what matters. College? Already taken care of. Your fund is protected, and I've set aside extra money for your future. Benjamin smiled for the first time in weeks. Dad, I'm glad you're fighting back. That night, I reviewed all the evidence I had collected: financial records, photos, background checks, witness statements from Dorothy, and Janet's testimony about the attempted loan fraud. Allison wanted to make me vanish, but she disappeared instead, leaving a trail of evidence for the courts. The invisible husband was about to become very visible. The process server found Allison at Janet's house Tuesday morning. I wasn't there to see her reaction to the divorce papers, but Janet called me an hour later, furious. Michael, what the hell are you doing? Allison is devastated. Janet, I said calmly, your sister committed fraud, theft, and adultery. She's lucky I'm handling this through the courts rather than criminal charges. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting my family from a woman planning to take everything and run with a con artist. Janet went quiet. She knew I was right, but family loyalty ran deep. What do you want from her? She finally asked. Full custody of Benjamin, the return of stolen property, and a fair division of assets that she didn't try to hide or transfer illegally. If she agrees, we can settle quietly. If not, everything goes public, Chandler's criminal history and her attempts at fraud included. That afternoon, my lawyer called with an update. Allison's attorney wants to meet, he said. They're requesting mediation instead of court. What changed their mind? Probably the restraining order on the accounts. They can't touch any money until this is resolved. Perfect. Financial pressure is the best motivator. The mediation session was set for Thursday at a neutral downtown location. Allison arrived looking haggard, flanked by her lawyer and Janet. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My client is prepared to discuss terms, Allison's lawyer began, but maintains that Mr. Fleming's claims are exaggerated. I slid a folder across the table, bank records showing unauthorized transfers, photos of stolen property, and a complete background check on Chandler Nash, a.k.a. Charles Newman, a.k.a. Nathan Chandler. Allison's lawyer grew more serious with each page. Where is Mr. Nash now? He asked. Unknown, I replied. He disappeared the day after Allison moved out, leaving behind a storage unit full of property from other victims. Allison finally looked up, pale. That's not true. It's all true, I said, meeting her gaze. The question is whether you want to be his victim or his accomplice. The mediation lasted 4 hours. In the end, Allison accepted my terms. I kept the house, full custody of Benjamin, and most financial assets. She received her personal items, her car, and enough money to start over elsewhere. As we signed the final papers, Allison finally addressed me directly. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I know, I replied. But wanting something different and destroying everything to get it are two completely separate things. She nodded and walked out of my life as quietly as she had tried to erase me from hers. 3 months later, Benjamin and I had settled into a steady routine. Homework at the kitchen table, weekend baseball games, and honest conversations about everything, from girls to college plans. Dad, Benjamin asked one evening while we grilled burgers on the deck, do you ever miss her? I paused, watching the sun sink over our backyard. I miss who I thought she was, I said, but I don't miss feeling invisible in my own life. Benjamin nodded, carrying the quiet wisdom of someone who had learned early that sometimes the people meant to love you are the ones who hurt you most. Challenge accepted, Dad, he said, raising his soda can in a mock toast. I laughed and clinked my beer against his. Challenge completed, son. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in the kitchen making breakfast for Benjamin. The house felt different now, lighter, free of the tension that had weighed on our lives for so long. Benjamin bounded downstairs in his baseball uniform, running late for practice. Dad, can you drive me today? He asked, grabbing his equipment bag. Coach wants to talk to parents about scholarship opportunities. Absolutely, I replied, pouring coffee into my travel mug. How are your grades? Straight A's, Benjamin said proudly. Turns out, I could focus better without worrying about Mom's moods. We both thrived in the stability that followed Allison's departure. Benjamin's grades soared, and he made varsity baseball as a junior. I had even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it was nice to converse with women who saw me as a person, not just furniture. Dorothy arrived carrying her thermos of coffee and her usual knowing smile. "Michael," she said, "Chandler Nash was sentenced yesterday, 7 years for fraud and identity theft. Most of the other victims are getting restitution thanks to the evidence you helped collect." Her expression turned serious. Allison testified against him. The prosecutor said her cooperation was essential for the conviction. I felt a mix of emotions: relief that justice had been served, sadness that the marriage ended so poorly, and gratitude that Allison had finally done the right thing. "How's she doing?" I asked. "She's working at a bank in Phoenix," Dorothy replied. "Starting over, rebuilding her life." She patted my arm. "People make mistakes, Michael. What matters is what they do next." Later, while Benjamin was at baseball practice, my phone rang. "Michael." A familiar but hesitant voice. "It's Allison." My stomach tightened. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. "Hello, Allison. How are you?" "I wanted to apologize," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not for the divorce. That was necessary, but for how I treated you. You deserve better." I sat at the kitchen table, looking out at the yard where Benjamin and I had spent countless evenings talking and tossing the football. "Thank you," I said. "It means something. I also want you to know I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I made such destructive choices," she continued. "The therapist says I was afraid of being ordinary, so I convinced myself you were the problem. We both contributed to the issues." "Though I know that isn't entirely true," I said. "No, Michael, this was on me," she admitted. "You were exactly who you said you were from the start. Honest, reliable, committed." I threw that away for a fantasy of excitement. We talked for another 10 minutes about Benjamin, practical matters, and the strange process of rebuilding separate lives. After hanging up, I reflected on the journey, from being dismissed as invisible to reaching a moment of honest accountability. My phone buzzed with a text from Benjamin. "Practice ended early. Can you pick me up? I have news about the scholarship meeting." I grabbed my keys and headed out for my son, the most important person in my life. Challenge accepted, indeed. 2 years later, I stood in the parking lot of Benjamin's high school, watching him cross the graduation stage, valedictorian, full baseball scholarship, and a young man who had learned that character matters more than charm. Dorothy sat beside me, dabbing her eyes. "That boy is going to change the world," she said. "He already changed mine," I replied. After the ceremony, Benjamin found me in the crowd, diploma in hand and grinning. "We did it, Dad," he said, hugging me. "You did it, son. I just provided backup." Among the families taking photos, I noticed a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Allison had come to see Benjamin graduate. She looked older, calmer, healthier. The frantic energy that had marked her final years was gone. "Michael," Allison said carefully, "thank you for letting me know about the graduation. He's your son, too." "You should be here," I replied. Benjamin hugged her, and I saw tears in both their eyes. They had been rebuilding their relationship through calls and supervised visits. It wasn't the same as before, but it was honest. "Mom," Benjamin said, "Dad told me you testified against Chandler. That took courage." Allison glanced at me, surprised I framed it positively. "It was the least I could do," she said. That evening, Benjamin and I sat on the deck watching the sunset. He was leaving for college in 3 months. "Dad," he asked, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom hadn't said that thing about you disappearing?" "Sometimes," I said, "but I think we'd have ended up here eventually. We just stopped talking honestly about what we wanted from life." "Are you happy now?" he asked. "More than I've ever been," I said. Benjamin nodded, satisfied. "You know what's funny?" he said. "When Mom said nobody would notice if you disappeared, she was completely wrong. I would have noticed. Dorothy would have noticed. Everyone whose cases you handled would have noticed." "Thank you, son." Challenge accepted. I laughed. Challenge completed. I added, reflecting on how those cruel words had forced me to stop being invisible and fight for what truly mattered. Sometimes the worst thing someone can say becomes the best thing that ever happened, if you're strong enough to prove them wrong.